Hello, Andrew Colsky here from Stop My OCD and Anxiety Enders. And today we have an episode where we're going to be speaking with Alaina Redding, who is a high school student interested in psychology. And she's been doing some interesting research and learning a lot and sharing with me a lot about high school students today. So, Alaina, welcome. And could you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yes, thank you. So again, my name is Alaina Redding. I am a junior in a very small town in Pennsylvania, and pretty recently I started research with Professor Lifshitz out of Arizona, and we have been talking about accessibility, time privilege, all regarding mental health applications.
Fantastic. And that's actually how we met each other because of the work you're doing. And I want to definitely talk about your research, but before I do that, I'd love to learn a little bit more about your background in terms of here you are in high school. You already know that you have an interest in psychology and maybe some of the technology related to psychology. What got you interested in that in the first place?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that I've always thought other people and how the human mind works was very interesting. And being from the small town that I'm from, I really wasn't able to get a lot of exposure to the field. So I was able to find the opportunity through like a program where it connects you with professors and mentors. And that was how I was able to like begin this research. And I immediately enjoyed it. It didn't feel like research work. It felt like something that I was actually passionate about.
Hmm. Okay, great. So, where did you even get the idea from in the beginning to even look for a professor, to look for anybody involved with this?
So my mom forwarded me an email about this, and she's like, "Oh, hey, you might want to try this." And it was one of those opportunities where I just felt like I couldn't pass it up.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. So, tell us then, what specifically is the research that you're doing?
Yeah, so it was a long process. So we started out talking about how mental health treatment has kind of evolved over time and how a lot of them kind of trace back to even religion. So my original, like, I guess, beginning point of this was looking at the modern day mental health treatments, CBT, of course, but how we use them with our technology, like the mental health apps, and then tracing them back and seeing where they started. And as I was researching these apps, I then looked at like the demographics and the amount of subscribers and what those types of people look like and who they are. And I realized that there was a lot of, I guess, the subscribers were very skewed in certain directions, and that gave me a lot of questions like, why is this the case, and how can we make these apps more accessible and more used by people? So that was something that was really fun for me actually to look at.
Okay, all right. So, with all the data that you looked at and realizing there was sort of a skewing in some of the audiences, why don't you share with us what apps and things did you look into, and then tell us about that data?
Yes. So my professor and I looked into three mental health apps. So Calm, of course, which is just a mental health app, as most people know. It aims to improve users' mental and physical health through mindfulness meditation. We also looked into Wobot, which is an AI-powered chat therapy app. And then we also looked into Super Better, which is a game-based psychoeducation app. So we really kind of went in different directions with what types of apps we were looking at to get a better understanding of these types of applications.
Okay.
And so I was able to find a, how do I put this? Like, it was from Calm talking about their subscribers, like the race, the income, those sorts of things, from their subscribers. And it was very much mostly white, mostly women, mostly wealthy subscribers.
Mhm.
In fact, I have the data if I can find it. So there were 5 times the number of people making over $100,000 annually than there were those making under $21,000 annually. But if you look at the people in the United States who make those amounts, they were almost equal. So you can kind of see that someone's financial state can affect how accessible these apps are. And I thought that that was something that was definitely like really important to look at and figure out what are ways that we can bring these types of programs to more people and in a better way.
Mhm. Wow, wow. So you talked about data that you found from Calm. Was there any data from any of the other apps?
So the other apps are quite smaller, I would say. So I wasn't able to find any of the demographics for those in particular, but with the Calm subscribers, I think there's a certain I think that there's a certain type of person who goes and participates in mindfulness and mental health. So I would imagine that they're probably similar throughout, which is one of the reasons why I'm curious, how can we not make it a specific type of person that participates in mental health things and make it everyone does?
Mhm. So based on the data that you've already seen, do you have any hypotheses as to why it's skewed that way, or do you plan to do any research to try and figure that out?
So that is something that I did try to look into, and I think that some of the main factors are finance. As I said, the incomes. I think that a lot of these programs cost money to like fully use, especially on Calm. Their subscription is like $60 a year or something. And if you're not spending that, a lot of the features of Calm aren't available. So that's one factor that I definitely think can affect this. And another is time. I spent a long time looking at the concept of time privilege and how even if an app exists and can be used, it doesn't necessarily mean people will or can use them because of like work or school. You can't ask them to just pull out their phone in the middle of class or something and spend 10, 15, 20 minutes just doing mindfulness. Sure, that might be helpful, but it's not realistic to ask people to do that. So that was definitely one of the main factors. And I think that that's something that I looked at with my research to find a way around, but I think that it'll be a real roadblock in a lot of the mental health treatment sorts of things.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly have not done the research, but something that I was thinking about as you were talking about that is something that you said, which is I'm assuming, and it's just an assumption, that a lot of people who are making lower amounts of money may very well be working more than one job. They may have transportation issues. Like if you don't own a car, you got to rely upon the public bus system and public transport, which can take a lot of time. Maybe you're also trying to deal with healthcare for or daycare for your kids. So to say to someone like that, oh, just take 10 minutes and sit down and relax is probably going to be really, really challenging for them because they're struggling to get through every minute of the day. So, and that's exactly what you were talking about. So that's what I was thinking. Um, so from this, what is your next step with your research if you have a next step?
Yeah, so right now I'm taking any opportunities I can to talk with different people and hear their ideas as well. But in general, I think that technology is a great asset for us to use in mental health treatment, but because technology can be so expensive, it can also cause disparities. So I think that things like time privilege or like financial restraints are something that like app developers and other technology mental health people need to think about when they're like developing this sorts of technology and finding ways that we can use it. I don't
Mhm.
think that it should only benefit people with time or people with money, and that we should try to benefit everyone. And that, as you said, a lot of the times people who are working multiple jobs, have lower incomes, they might struggle with their mental health more than someone who's like financially stable. So they probably need these sorts of mental health treatments as well.
Right. And that's, you got me thinking. And it's interesting because before we are having this conversation, a lot of the information that I was seeing out there was how apps and technology were making healthcare or mental health care more accessible to people, from the standpoint that, imagine someone seeing a mental health counselor, which means that number one, they've got to pay for that actual appointment or have insurance to pay for it, probably with a copay. They've got to take the time to go and see that person, typically an hour, a week or something. So that can be really expensive really quickly. And then you say, well, look, they can, buy this Calm app and do some similar things for only $60 a year, which true is a lot less expensive than seeing a mental health counselor. But then even with that, now we're seeing the disparity. So even though this technology is designed and to, I guess, to a great degree, it does bring wider access to people, there's still that big gap. So,
Yes.
I hadn't looked at it from that perspective. I'm glad you're looking at it. Wow. So, so as you learn all of these things and you think into your own future, are you a future app developer for mental health, or what do you see for your future based on what you're learning?
So I don't know if I would become a app developer, but I like to. It's interesting for me to look at what needs like fixed, or in what ways I could help people or just improve certain systems. I'm not afraid of trying new things or like looking at things from another angle. So if research I do can make things more accessible or can help people who wouldn't otherwise get help, that's something that I would find very fulfilling.
Mm-hmm. Great, great. And can you tell us a little bit about, you said you're doing this in conjunction with a program where you found a professor to kind of help you through this. For other students who may be watching this program, can you tell us about that? How did, I mean, I know you said your mom sent you an email, but tell us more about the program and how other people might get involved.
Okay, so I believe that it's called like College Impact. So the program itself is quite expensive, and I recognize that it was a huge privilege for me to be able to do this sort of research. But it and still is giving me a lot of connections with people and a lot of experience that I wouldn't otherwise get, especially coming from such a small like town. Um, but if someone is interested and has the like means to be a part of this college impact program, it will connect you with a professor based on your application, and then you will meet with them and do research. There are many different types of mediums that you can choose to present your research. You can like write for different like articles, get your research published. It helps you with connections, as we are here today, getting connected with people who can help you with your like professional goals. Networking, I think, is another huge thing that has helped. So there's a lot of opportunities that come from it if you can afford it. So that's unfortunately one of the main things, is that it's quite pricey.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But even so I understand it's pricey to get into the program, but then you said that once you were in, you were starting to make contacts with other people, and those don't cost you anything, right? I mean,
Exactly. Yes.
so I guess the lesson there is, even if you don't have the means to get into a program like you're in, just reaching out to other people in the field and using the internet and things like that, there's going to be some hits, some misses, but there will be some hits, and you'll find
Oh,
people who are
yes.
willing to talk to you.
Yes, I before I signed like applied for this research opportunity, I guess they would call it cold emailed professors in my area, asking them if they wanted any like interns or just like someone to be there so I could get some experience. none of them went through. They said the ones I emailed said that they had plans over the summer, but I think that it's not hearing a no is easy to get over because hearing a yes is a great opportunity. So it's worth it.
Yeah, yeah, and you definitely have to go into it knowing that you're going to hear a lot of no's, but you'll
Mhm.
never hear a yes if you don't try.
Exactly. Exactly.
So that's great. So okay, so here you are, you're in high school, you're trying to get good grades, trying to get yourself set up for college, you're doing, additional projects and things. Um, so tell me, is there anything else that you've been doing related to high school students and stress?
Oh, that's a good question. So, I think that a lot of the high school students I hang out with who are my friends were pretty similar in our stress levels. And I think we all have a similar drive to help other teenagers who are stressed. And me specifically, I find it very interesting. In my psychology class, we conducted a survey, me and my friend, asking students whether or not school stressed them out. And over, I think it was like 95 or 96% of people who took our survey said that school was a major stressor in their lives. And then the top stressors of school were like workload, academic competition, and I think the other one was like um, maybe I think it was peer conflict, something like that. Um, so I think that we all relate to students being stressed.
Right, right. And do you have any information about what students typically do when they're feeling stressed out? How do they manage it? What are their coping skills?
So I think that unfortunately a lot of students turn to substances like vaping and sometimes drinking, which is really sad, honestly. If we look at the more healthy side of coping mechanisms, I think that a lot of us will just complain to each other and like support groups within our friends. I think both of the not the drugs and alcohol, but like getting support from your friends is something very important, especially as teenagers. You might feel alone, so it helps to have other people who share the same feelings as you.
Mhm. So now comes an interesting question that kind of brings all this together. So you're looking into mental health apps. You have an understanding of what high school students are going through in terms of stressors. Do you find that social media, so I'm not even sure what the most prominent ones are today, maybe you can tell me, how does that impact stress in high schoolers?
I think that a lot of the teenagers I've talked to, like if I were to ask them whether or not they think that social media is a positive or negative influence in their lives, I think it would be hard to get a straight answer. Definitely social media like TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, those are probably the main social media sites. I think that they cause negative like emotions and stress with people, like body image, drama, things like that. The whole curated life. I think those things are definitely negative. But I also think that they could tell me a lot of positives that they've had through social media. They get to talk to their friends more often, get support easier. You don't have to just walk over to somebody's house. You can call them and immediately get support from them. So I think connection is definitely a large one with that.
Mhm. So, you say you can easily call friends. What do you find in your experience, just for you and your friends? Do people call and speak to each other verbally, or do they text more often?
Um, I think a combination of both, depending on what you need. With my friends, if we want to have a conversation or talk about something really important, we will call. It's good to hear someone else's voice and like their real like personality through a call, versus just a text. So I think that I think that we do still call each other. It's not strictly text.
Okay. I always find that to be an interesting one because when I was in high school, we didn't have texting. So we would call and talk to each other on the phone.
Right.
And we didn't have cell phones either. So the phone was plugged into the wall, so you couldn't move. Um, but then as we got older, I always remember I was in the car with my niece, and she was of the generation of texting for everything. And so we're sitting in the same car, and trying to get her to talk was difficult. But if I texted her on the phone in the same car, I would get a response. So I've always remembered that and found that to be an interesting thing. So, so tell me about resources at your school. If somebody was having a difficult time with something, does your school make it, well, first off, does your school have resources, and do they make it easy for people to use them?
So with my school, we have a program called Safe to Say. So it's, I think, an anonymous reporting app. So you can, if you have a friend who you are worried about, but you don't want to have your name tied to anything, you can say, I have a friend, this is what they're experiencing. I'm worried for their safety. So please get in contact with them this way. Or I believe you can also use it if you're struggling, um, or like those sorts of things. We have a school counselor if you have issues like in school that you can talk to about that. Other than that, I would say we don't have anything else besides like the suicide prevention hotline, those sorts of things. I think my school is probably a bit limited. We have about 400 students, so it's
Mhm.
limited with the resources we have.
Right. Well, is there any sort of training or awareness programs or anything at your school when students first start at your school, let's say? How do they become aware of these resources?
So we will have like at freshman orientation, our school counselor will tell us about the Safe to Say program. There's posters posted everywhere about it. I don't think that students in my school take it very seriously. We have it as like a joke, like, oh, I'm gonna report you to Safe to Say. I don't think that they see it as like a realistic resource for them, but our school does tell us about it at least once a year.
Hmm. Okay, all right. Are there any like posters around the school or anything, or it's just that one mention?
There are posters around the school that talk about it, yeah.
Hmm. Okay. So let's examine a scenario here. Let's say that you or one of your friends um, realizes that somebody else that you all know at school seems to be struggling with something. You know, we don't know what happened. Maybe something happened in their family or something happened in their life. And you have a sense that they have unfortunately turned to substance use to cope with their situation. What would you all do, if anything?
That's a good question. I think that our mentality is we are their friends, so we must handle it. At least try to handle it ourselves. And if that doesn't work, then go to adults. But I think it depends on the teenagers also. Some teenagers are just okay with their friends using substances. My friend group, we don't at all. We see it as they're using substances, probably not, definitely not for a good reason. If they're using, especially as a coping strategy, we need to support them and try to help them away from that negative coping mechanism and to something positive. So if, for example, like one of my friends were was turning to substances as a like stress relief, I think definitely we would talk to them saying like, if you need to talk to someone, talk to us. We are here. It's a safe space. Like, please don't go and get yourself addicted to like a substance. And it's really difficult. I haven't personally been in that situation, but I know it's something that a lot of like a struggle, like we struggle with dealing with that a lot. And it's hard. It's also pretty normalized, I think, in our school for teenagers to smoke and things.
Hmm.
And it's like, oh, that's their business, it's their decision. But again, it's hard.
Yeah, yeah. And it's from my side doing mental health counseling, one of the things that I see repeatedly is you get people who are of high school age when their frontal cortex is still developing, and this is where all the higher level decision making, problem solving, all that happens. And if they start to use substances as a coping mechanism in high school or even junior high school, what happens is the substance becomes sort of the problem solver for them, and then they don't develop the skills in the frontal cortex that they need later in life. So eventually they start to have trouble at work or getting a job or keeping a job. They start to have trouble in their relationships because they don't have the ability to problem solve. They turn to more substances because it slowly, it becomes more and more. And then eventually some of them will come for mental health counseling. And what we have to do is we have to sort of build all of those problem solving skills and things from the beginning, whereas other people who struggled through it and learned the ways through, they've developed the processes up here. um and that's kind of what happens now. Telling that to someone who doesn't want to hear that, you can't get through to them. They just have to wait until they get to that point. But that's the reality. Not every single case, of course, but in a lot of cases that's the reality of how it works.
Yeah.
So wow. Okay. So in terms of the faculty at your school, are there any particular teachers or other members of the faculty that the students, informally feel safe going to if they needed someone to talk to?
Yes, definitely. There are a few teachers in my school who we feel like they're our mom or dad. It's very nice. I I have a very I guess admiration and huge appreciation for them. Like I would feel comfortable if I needed to just to go and cry in their classroom. I've been with friends who have gone and cried in their classroom and they tell us like it's a safe space here, let's work through the problem and offer solutions or support, and it's very nice. I think sometimes some of my classmates will go to them before they'll go to the school counselor just because they interact with the teachers more, they know them better, and the teachers know the students better, especially being in such a small school. It's very tight knit, which is nice.
Mhm. Yeah, I remember back in high school myself, there was a couple teachers that were, they made themselves approachable. And I think it's just like you're describing, when someone was really kind of struggling, maybe they didn't feel comfortable talking to the school counselor because then they were admitting that they had a problem or something.
Right.
But just being able to go and talk to an adult who was compassionate, and had empathy and could work with them was really helpful. So I'm glad that there are teachers out there like that. I'm sure in every school. So we appreciate those who do that. So I have one other topic which may be off your main knowledge base, but still I'm curious about your own personal opinions. So one of the things that's happening in healthcare, as we talk about the apps and things, is this concept of virtual reality. And I know that virtual reality has been used and is used for gaming a lot, and there's a lot of kids who and adults who get into that for gaming. But the ability of virtual reality to bring healthcare to people who may not have easy access to either healthcare practitioners, like, they live several hundred miles away from their office or whatever it may be. So my first question to you is, have you personally ever used virtual reality, even if it was a game or anything?
Yes, I have used virtual reality like once or twice before. I think it's really interesting, really cool.
Hmm. And have you ever looked into anything related to virtual reality and mental health?
Yes, so I've been aware of the virtual reality exposure therapy, which I think is really, really cool and can be a great tool for therapists to use for their clients.
Okay, because one of the things that I'm seeing, because I personally have been working in that area, you know, for people who are your age today virtual reality is not scary to them. It's just something that they know about. But you get into people who didn't grow up with it, and it might be scary. They might not know about it at all. It might be confusing. And if you consider that, most people who are working as mental health practitioners are not in high school, they're an older generation, obviously, because they've had to go through all their schooling. A lot of them may not have had any exposure or access to virtual reality. So my question to you is, do you think that as people your age start to get into college, start families, kind of, move up the age ladder, do you think that virtual reality or similar types of technologies would be acceptable to them for mental health? Or do you think that they would ignore it and rather have personal face-to-face interactions?
I think that my generation, we still value like face-to-face interactions, regardless of what some like the older generations might think about us. We still want to talk to people and be face-to-face. But I also think that we're more open to using technology, and especially for people who have already used virtual reality in the game sense, I think that they would be fascinated and open to using virtual reality for mental health.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah. I'm, there's a particular therapist who is in New York, and he and I have developed a good friendship over time. And he has been using virtual reality for anxiety treatment for many, many years, very successfully. And we talk about the fact that virtual reality in mental health has been around for a long time, but it's never really been adopted. And part of that, again, I don't have any research to say it, but my belief is that a lot of mental health counselors just don't understand the technology. They've never been exposed to it. It can be expensive these days. So there's several different reasons that might be holding it back from sort of taking root. But as we move forward and as technology becomes more accessible, less expensive, as more people learn about it, as people in your generation continue to move forward and do new research and come up with new ideas, I think we're going to start to see more of it, but it is sort of on a slow trajectory upwards. So okay, so last question for you then is, if again someone is watching this video and they are a student and they're interested in getting into the, whether it be psychology or any other scientific field, for example, and they don't have the means, they don't have access to money, they don't have any particular connection, they're starting from just being a plain old student with no ideas of where to go, what would be your suggestions to them of how to even begin to get themselves involved?
Yeah, so especially from my experience, my school doesn't have a lot of opportunities, especially in comparison to a lot of other schools. The first thing is be open to taking every opportunity. It doesn't have to be what you want to do with the rest of your life, but just getting exposure to things is super, super valuable. Talk to people in your community, put yourself out there, even if it's scary. I struggle with talking to people sometimes, but if you can get over some of that, it opens a lot of opportunities for you. Another thing is don't be afraid to email people. Hearing no is not as scary as you think it will be, and people aren't as mean as you think they are going to be either. So putting yourself out there, emailing a lot of people, that's totally a great step in the right direction. Even volunteering can be a great way to make those connections and just be involved in your community as well. And if you don't have access to some of those, or if they don't get you as far as you're hoping, it's okay to try things yourself, find something you're interested in, and do research. It's harder to do it alone, but if you keep at it and you keep working, I'm sure that you will be able to make it somewhere.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us here and share the wonderful work that you've been doing and your advice for other students your age, because I think there's there are a lot of very bright students who maybe just don't know where to get started or how to go about it. So you're a shining example for those that it can be done, and you can take it as far as you want to take it. So thank you again for joining us, and I wish you the best of success in the future.
Thank you.